Hi everyone, GM. So nice to see all of you. Join us for another workshop. Today we are hearing all about on-chain governance. So hope you're all just as excited as I am. Feel free to say hi in the chat. And as usual, pop any questions that you have in the questions tab. And our lovely speaker will be more than happy to answer them. So as our speaker is joining the stage, please do let us know how everyone is doing so far in the hack, if you've thought about what you want to build yet, if you've teamed up, etc., etc. Love to get an update from everyone. Hi, Barry, how are you?
Hey Clara, how are you?
All good, all good. Feel free to share your screen if you have slides or if you're doing a live demo whenever you're ready.
Awesome.
And yeah, like I said, guys, in the meantime, please do pop any questions that you have in the questions tab, just on the left-hand side of the chat. Just makes it easier so that we don't miss any of your questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Clara. So last time we talked about minting tokens, distributing those tokens as well. Now we're going to talk about another part of building a rollup, or what comes with a rollup, and that's the governance part. And like a decentralized blockchain, rollups come with decentralized governance. And this is in contrary to other systems where you may not have on-chain governance out of the box. Rollups come with the ability for people to stake the rollup token and then vote on certain parameters within the chain. So for example, last week we covered the minting parameters, which sets the inflation rate, which sets how long it takes to actually get to the target inflation rate. The distribution, which is how are those tokens actually distributed that are created, that are minted. So for example, 50% go to stakers, 10% goes to the sequencer or the operator of the actual blockchain, and then the rest can go to the community pool, which is how which are funds stored by the rollup in the rollup, but they can be distributed through governance. So, for example, uh, there's a proposition to the rollup governance and says, hey, we want to spend X amount of tokens that are controlled by the rollup and send it to this address, which may or may not be a multi-sig, and that person is going to use it for a specific purpose. For example, funding the building of the documentation, the building a website for the rollup or something else, or deploying an application. So when you're in the documentation in the rollups learn section for governance, it gives a brief overview of what is it that you're actually getting. So in the beginning it says what is a governor, and a governor is the same thing as a validator in, for example, a Cosmos blockchain, where the validator, you stake your tokens. If you staked dime tokens on Dymension, you stake your dime tokens to a validator, and they vote on your behalf. So for example, if I switch the screens and share this tab instead, here is a governance proposal to, for example, whitelist the NIM rollup deployer. And people vote, but these votes are done through the proxy of the validator that you stake with. So you can choose, similar to Dymension, you choose a governor. So I chose Sanchez, for example, and I stake with Sanchez, which is a governor. The difference between a validator on Dymension and a governor on a rollup is that a governor doesn't actually require to run a node, to run any infrastructure. They are just a proxy member, or like a representative in the governance uh, portion of the rollup. Instead of, and they also charge a fee. They also could charge a fee, but they don't have any on-chain or off-chain costs. They are just there to participate in governance. And as most stakers don't really participate in governance, they they delegate their vote to the governor. If a delegator, for example, I delegate my tokens to Sanchez, I can still vote and it will override Sanchez's vote. But if I don't vote, then Sanchez will be my representative. Let me go back to the docs. So that discusses what is a governor. And when you're creating the rollup, one of the parameters in what's used is the staking module for setting how many governors can exist in a blockchain. There is no necessarily limit in terms of like hard-coded limit in the rollup, but I would keep it below 1,000 just because the more governors there are, it's just computational overhead for the rollup to compute every block. What is the current vote, or what is the current ratio or voting power between the governors? So I would definitely keep it to a minimum. And remember, this is a representative government rather than a democracy. And the difference being that in the democracy, it's one person, one vote. Here, it's you're delegating your tokens to a specific governor, and they increase their voting power in this government, and that will change how those votes or how the voting power is distributed across the governors. So it's not that one governor equals one governor, is that one governor can have 99% of the power if everyone just delegates their tokens to that particular governor. How you create a governor is one, it will be provided through the UI. So we're going to provide the user experience for interacting or creating a governor through not only the portal, but also like a widget that we provide in Dymension. So in Dymension, in the governance, here in the integrate section, for front ends, we created a Dymension Connect, which allows you to integrate, for example, depositing IBC tokens into your rollup or any type of, or eventually on-ramping into your rollup directly. We'll also include the ability or the functionality to, for example, for people to vote with governors in your rollup application instead of just using the portal, which is also going to be an option. So there's going to be a bunch of rollups, and yours is one of them. And then yours will have a governance section, governors section, which is the staking, and also the governance, which is the actual proposals that are being voted on. This will be provided, but also you'll have the optionality to have it embedded into your application as well. Going back to the governance section, as I mentioned, there is no, for example, hard-coded limit in the RDK, in the rollup development kit, of how many governors you can have. But again, I recommend it to keep it at a minimum. I want to share my one more. Clara, do you see my iTurn? I don't think so, right? You still see the docs?
Yeah, I still see the docs.
Okay, I want to share the.
You might have to stop share screen. Yeah, exactly. And then restart and do the whole screen
Yeah,
potentially.
I just want entire screen. Okay.
It's always tricky picking the right one. There's too many
Right.
options.
Okay, now you should see my iTurn. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can see it.
So this is the CLI transaction for creating a governor. This is the same transaction that you would do if you're creating a validator. We're going to change probably the create a validator to create a governor, but in essence, you choose how many tokens you want to self-delegate. So how many tokens from your existing wallet you want to delegate to your new governor. You choose the name, you choose the chain ID, which is your rollup, and you set the commission rate. And that is, for example, what is used in the Dymension portal. And if you go to the staking, and you'll see that there's a commission rate for each validator. This is also applicable to your governor. Some people will do 0%, and some people will want to do maybe more. At the end of the day, it's totally up to the governor. For example, if I'm an investment company and I invest in your rollup, I may do 100% commission which means that I'm just going to delegate all my tokens to my governor. That governor is going to receive the token rewards, but it's unlikely for anyone else to delegate to my governor because they won't receive any of the rewards. On the other hand, if you're looking at more competitive governors, then there may be ones with low commission rates. And so when you're setting the commission rate, that is over here, it may be enforced, a minimum commission rate may be enforced by the rollup. So if we're going into the staking module, which actually sets most of the governor parameters, we have the max validators, which will be max governors, and you have more also importantly is the min commission rate. So for example, in Dymension, there is a 5% minimum commission that someone may charge. And this is mostly to prevent centralization of validators that can operate at low margins. This isn't as applicable for governors because they don't run infrastructure. So that is setting up the governance section. Again, when a user is staking their tokens, so for example, they get an airdrop or they purchase the RollApp token on the Dymension chain or a centralized exchange or somewhere else, and they bridge it to the RollApp with IBC, then those tokens can be staked with a governor. And this is helpful for your RollApp token to actually accrue some value that is gained from the activity on the rollup. Because of the fees and the minting rewards, they're distributed mostly to these stakers. That means that the people will be interested in actually staking your tokens to get some of the rewards, including the fees and the mints. So that will be displayed on the governance section over here. And that's pretty much it. I want to discuss on like what can a governor actually change now. The first thing that a governor can change is, most importantly, are the parameters within a rollup. So if you open a Genesis file, or when you initialize a rollup and you'll see a Genesis file, genesis.json, you'll see on each individual key, each individual module, a list of parameters. And these parameters, they can be changed. So for example, the community tax is the amount of tokens that are distributed from the rewards to the community pool, every block. This could be set to 0, but it could also be changed through governance proposals. The base proposal reward, which is the sequencer address, that can also be changed based on the governance of the rollup. And there are a lot of, not so many, but there are certain functionalities, for example, the deposit period, or how much percent of the governance is actually required to pass a proposal. And this is actually something I want to get into. These parameters, for example, the ability to pass a proposal is 50% threshold, but you need 33% of the total bonded amount of tokens to participate in the proposal. These parameters, these tally params, as they're noted here, they can be changed through governance. A veto threshold. So when there is a proposal, you have 3 options for governance. So for example, here we go to NIM proposal. We see yes, no, and veto. Also abstain, which means that they're not participating. Yes is yes, so it requires a 50% threshold. No is no, which is also, it requires a 50% threshold. And no with veto is a special one where it requires a 33% threshold, but it's only used, or only should be used, if there's something like a scam proposal. And what this does, in contrary to yes and no, it actually burns the deposited amount of tokens for the proposal. So if we go here and there's a veto threshold, which is 33%, if 33% of the bonded tokens vote no with veto, then it will decline the proposal, but it also will burn the deposited amount. And this is something that I want to get into now is when you're creating the RollApp in the governance section of the Genesis file, you'll see the minimum deposit. And this is an array of tokens, but I recommend just using your native token. So, for example, if it's A racks, which is 18 decimals of racks, your base denomination. And this is the amount of tokens that is required to be deposited into the proposal for it to actually to start counting the votes to enter the voting period. So here we see max deposit period, which is, I believe this is 2 days if I'm not mistaken. And then, so it takes 172,000 seconds to reach this amount of deposited tokens, and anyone can deposit, not only the proposer. So it just requires to reach this threshold. And then the voting period starts, which is a different parameter. If enough people vote or no with veto, then the total amount of deposited tokens will be burned or it will be sent to the community pool. I'm actually, now that I'm thinking about it, it's actually sent to the community pool. This is to prevent or to dissuade people from spamming. So for example, on Dymension, we have 1,000 Dime that's required to send a proposal on chain for the voting period. Now, interestingly enough, as an example, there's one rejected proposal, which was a scam proposal. And enough people voted no with veto, and they deposited 1,000 Dime, and they lost those 1,000 Dime, which were sent to the community pool. So this is actually a live example of what happened only a week ago. So someone submitted a scam proposal, the governors, or on Dymension, it's the validators. The validators voted no with veto, and that passed the threshold, and those tokens were sent to the community pool. Now that we discussed the deposit, the voting period, the tally params, there are certain proposals that you will want to do on the blockchain. The first one is likely I'll say this. There are certain proposals that will be probably likely more used than others. For example, if you have a community tax, then your community pool will start gaining funds. And those funds can be used to fund anything, as I mentioned. So it will be helpful, it will be useful for your community governance to participate in that type of voting. Other voting, for example, upgrading software, is generally not going to be used for governors, as there's two parts in upgrading software. For example, you're coding in the smart contract layer, so on the EVM or the CosmWasm layer. Those have their own upgrade parameters. So for example, if you do upgradable smart contract, they're not related to the governance of the actual rollup. The only things that are related to the governance of the actual rollup are the changing of the parameters, changing of, for example, spending the community pool, and that's pretty much it at a high level. The governance handles more of like holding and managing community DAO funds and changing parameters. So that's that. And there's also one more thing. When a user stakes their tokens, there's also a unstaking period. For Dymension, it's 21 days. This isn't necessarily required of like for how long. I think as a minimum, it should be set to 5 days. And that's because of a technical technical requirement of IBC, which is the bridge. And if it's a very short amount of unbonding, then the like client. So the way that Dymension works is that it has a like client of. I wonder if we have like a visual representation of this. But what it actually has is Dymension has a like client of the external chain. So, for example, if you're bridging from a RollApp to Dymension, then Dymension has like the latest state. And if the unbonding period is very low, then that like client will expire, and users won't be able to bridge out. So my recommendation is to do a 5-day minimum, and then at a maximum, like you don't want to dissuade users from actually staking their token on the RollApp. That's that, and that would be set on the unbonding of the staking. So the staking parameters, and we go into this in the launch section. So when you're actually creating the Genesis file in the staking, we say like how many seconds is recommended, how many validators are recommended, what is the min commission rate that is recommended, and this is done for every module that is relevant. So, for example, last week we went to the mint and the distribution. Here we go through the governance parameters and the staking parameters. And when you're creating a rollup, honestly, the focus should be on building a smart contract application. But the smart contract application doesn't need governance like compound governance or staking of the native token. Staking, minting, governance, those are all handled by the rollup out of the box, and it only requires just setting a few parameters. It's that simple. The focus of your rollup is the actual application. So what differentiates it from the other rollups or the other blockchains in the ecosystem? So that's setting that. And from this, you'll have people who can enter and exit the validator set. So you'll have, for example, here we have governors who are inactive, active, deactivating, which means they're leaving the active set. So on Dymension, there's 125 threshold. If you don't meet that requirement in delegated tokens, then you become deactivating, so you don't participate in governance and you don't get the rewards. And inactive, which is likewise their validator is not active, which would be the same thing as a governor on the RollApp. That's that, and I want to see if we have open questions.
So I think there is actually just one question that came in now from Jamaru asking, I've started working with Roller for a couple of days, but the relayer doesn't connect. I've learned from the Dime Discord that there is a general issue with relayers on Fopula and testnet. Do you have similar experience?
I would say right now, instead of using Roller, use the one second, I'll show you, is building a local instance of a RollApp EVM. So it would be to run a local instance, use this link, and I'll share it in the chat. But the reason is the relayer is not working is just because it's connecting to an old network, which Fruityland hasn't been updated it. So what they're doing right now, the developers they're updating Roller to be able to deploy applications and rollups onto the new testnets, which will have a working not only IBC relayer, but also like the required logic to have a mainnet rollup. So yeah, please use a local instance, which means that there is no bridging functionality. The bridging functionality, if you need it, I'm going to deploy the documentation this week for having a 2 instances of RollApps on a public testnet. So all you'll have to do is connect to the endpoints, and they will have a bridge to an existing Dymension testnet. So one is called RollApp X, and one is called RollApp Y. RollApp X has a EVM module, so people can deploy EVM smart contract, and RollApp Y has COSM WASM smart contracts. So RollApp X, you'll be able to not only use and deploy your application, but it'll also allow you to bridge tokens in and out. This is in contrary to actually building the Genesis file, which is like the actual RollApp. So if you're testing and deploying applications, either use the local instance of a RollApp, which doesn't have a bridge, or use RollApp X, which the documentation will come out this week for both RollApp X and RollApp Y.
Awesome, thank you. I also saw that there was someone, Sky is building an LST project. So just wanted to check whether you had any. They said they're still researching the team. They haven't started building yet, but just thinking if you have any thoughts on that, any resources to share, or any ideas, opinions.
Yeah, LST protocols are quite um, not the not my favorite, to be honest, just because they unfortunately at the end of the day will require some sort of multi-sig or centralization of token ownership. So for example, if you have a roll app or a different application that holds these Dime tokens, someone has to go and stake them on the Dymension chain, and that someone will probably be like a centralization vector. That's why I'm not a huge fan of LSTs. We also have one project. We have one project within the Dymension ecosystem called Nebulify that is deploying an LST project, LST rollup, and then you have a few other providers, Stride and Milky Way, and maybe P-Stake and some other ones that provide them as well. Feel free to go that direction. I think in terms of architecture, it's more similar to Stride and Milky Way, how they interact with Celestia, rather than how Stride interacts with other chains with interchain accounts, if you're familiar. Uh, but yeah, not a huge fan of LSTs, in my opinion.
Cool. That's really good insight. Sky, let us know if you have any thoughts in the chat as well. Adrian also says, just curious if you've heard of issues with the rollup of EVM init.sh file. I've been having trouble initializing the roll app with the accompanying Genesis file. I'm still going through the docs troubleshooting section. I've made a little headway, but wondering if this is a known issue or if I'm missing something.
If you're following this, well, let me share my screen and run it, and let's see if there's issue that I have. So here we want to install RollApp EVM. I think I have it on my local machine, so I want to remove that. Okay, so now I don't have this file. I'm going to install it. I think I'm running probably the wrong Go version to install. Yeah, so just need to update the Go version. And now I'll install the RollApp EVM, which should take just a few seconds. And next, I'm going to use these certain variables that are provided as a default. So you have, I'm sharing my screen, right? The docs and the iter.
Yes, you are.
Okay, so I'm just exporting these variables that help create the Genesis file. And once the EVM portion is downloaded, I'll be able to paste them. If it's not working, then the devs change something and then I'll update it really quick or have them update it. So now that we have RollApp EVM, we can create the Genesis file. And I generally do it manually. So I initialize the chain within it and then the chain ID. So it could be roll 101-1, which is the name, the chain ID, and the version. So version is usually just one for the first one, or it could, and then the actual moniker. So who is created, who is creating the rollup. This is done. This is the manual way, which means that after doing that, you would have to go into the launch section and like actually follow these steps. But if you want to do it the quick way, then exporting the variables and then initializing it should work. Now, if it doesn't work, then it would be, so this, the account's created, there's a moniker and invalid decimal expression. Yeah, so I will talk to the validators. Genesis operator is not valid string. So what this is just if we go to the RollApp EVM and we go to the Genesis operator address, there's no operator address here. So what that requires me to do is actually get the operator, but this will so this is the key. This is how to do it. This shows the validator address, and then you just paste that address here. But I will tell the engineers to fix this so that it actually works with the script.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And Adrian, let us know if you have any other questions in the chat. I think as a follow-up to the previous question regarding the Floppyland testnet and relayers, Jamaru asks, with this, can we connect with Portal also? I don't know if you remember exactly what the context was there. I just saw it now, but yeah, if not, maybe he can clarify.
You should be able to add your rollup to the portal, list your rollup. No. Yeah. When you create something on testnet, I will find how to. I think we had it before for Fruipyland, where people were able to add their rollup to the testnet. I want to confirm with the team how we're going to add it, how we're going to add the rollups on the current testnets. We have a chain registry, which is GitHub chain registry. This is the chain registry, which allows people rollups to be displayed on the portal. Which ones we're approving right now, I just have to confirm with the team, but I'll get back to you on that one.
Awesome.
And
yeah, I don't know if you saw his latest question as well.
yeah, I'm reading it right now. As long as a rollup is running, it will consume Dime and Tia or Avail. Is the rate of consumption stable or is it according to usage? This causes a standing cost for the project. For how does this relate with the pool that you showed us with the previous workshop? So the pool is not related. The pool is an existing pool, liquidity pool on the Dymension blockchain. For the rollup, paying in Dime, Tia, and Avail, that is based on the usage. So, for example, if the rollup doesn't have usage, then it doesn't produce blocks, which means that there's no on-chain transaction costs. If there's a lot of usage, then there's data that goes on-chain. So, for example, well, in that case, you're making money because your gas fees are generally higher than the data publication costs. So that's good. But yes, if your rollup doesn't have usage, then it won't post data on chain.
Awesome. Thank you. I think that were all the questions for now. Please let us know, everyone, if you have any final ones, and pop them in the chat real quickly. Beyond that, I don't know if you have any final things to share, Barry, in the meantime. Otherwise, I think it seems like everything has been answered.
Yeah, so we're coming up and bringing the rollup X and rollup Y testnets so people could easily deploy the smart contracts and focus actually on the most important part, which actually is building their applications. The rollup init script, I'll get that fixed quickly. And in terms of building your own blockchain, on a surface level, the token distribution and token minting and the governance is all you have to worry about when you're creating a rollup. Other than that, it's like getting, for example, like the address list for who you're actually going to distribute those tokens to. And besides that, it's just deploying or creating your application, right? Which is the most important part. Everything else is kind of secondary and it's out of the box. And like, I wanted to show you, hey, like you're just changing these parameters in the governance section in the Genesis file, and then bam, you have governance. Or you change these inflation rates, and bam, you have minting and distribution. So that's pretty much it when you're trying to build a rollup or build an application or build a blockchain, sorry. So that's why the most important focus is building your application. You could use, for example, Foundry, Remix, or Hardhat locally for now if you're having issues with the actual rollup, but we'll get the rollup X up live and also rollup Y for Kazawas builders.
Cool. And Jamar asks that you please let us know when it's ready for us to start again working with testnet. So maybe you could just let me know, Barry, and I can kind of relay all that information as well.
Sounds good.
Cool. Okay, well then I think that was it for today then. Tomorrow we're doing another workshop all about bridging to RollApp with IBC. So make sure to join for that as well. That one will be at 5:30 British Standard Time. The link should be in all of your calendars, and I will, of course, post about it on the Discord and all the usual stuff. But thank you so much, Barry, for today. I will see you again tomorrow as well, and hopefully everyone who's joined us today. Have a good rest of your day, guys.